Good evening. My name is Lucas Oliveira Mendez, and I share my name with my father and my grandfather. My grandfather, Mr. Lucas, was always fascinated by strange and ancient stories. Here in Mexico, there are many places like old mansions that people avoid, and the older folks tell stories that many say are just legends. My grandfather Lucas used to tell a story he experienced when he was young, around 12 years old. It happened in an old stone mansion where people said the devil himself lived. This mansion, with its sinister and decrepit appearance, gave chills just by looking at it, even from afar. The local residents who lived nearby claimed that a monster resided inside. At that time, my grandfather's family raised goats, and my father and uncle spent their days watching over them as they grazed on the hills. They had a dog named Max, a name my grandfather chose for reasons unknown to the family. One day, while they were heading back home, my uncle let out a scream that scared everyone, and Max started barking and ran towards the stone mansion, as if trying to scare something away from them. My uncle ran home, leaving my father alone to guide the goats. Only after passing the fence that belonged to the mansion did Max return to my father's side, and they continued home together. When they arrived, my grandfather called my father and asked, "What did your brother see that left him trembling like that, sitting in the living room?" My father replied that he didn't know, that he only saw his brother scream and run away. Upon entering the living room, he found his brother trembling, with their mother sitting beside him, asking what he had seen. Night fell and he didn't say anything. It was only the next day, when he was calmer, that he spoke about what he saw. "I saw something jumping from the tree to the mansion. It looked like a man with a hat and a cape. I don't know how he did it because the tree is at least 10 meters from the house." My father heard that, and after my brother went to have breakfast with my mother, he called me. We went together to the mansion. On the way, my father told Max to go back, but he ended up coming with us. When we reached the fence, the house was as it always had been for as long as I could remember. I asked my father if he knew who had lived there, and he replied, "A lady lived there with her family many years ago. They called her the widow. I don't know her name. She lived there with her 2 daughters, but then she was left alone. I don't remember exactly what she looked like, but I remember people were afraid of her because she always dressed in black, with a veil covering her face. She was always seen going to the cemetery path and spent a lot of time there. Sometimes, when people passed by late at night on the road, they would see her in front with a candle, all dressed in black. When she died, they said it was a man all in black who was seen leaving the house. And when they noticed she hadn't been seen for days, they went into the house and found her lying in bed, lifeless. They say that after that, sometimes people see a woman all in black passing by with a candle, and a man dressed in black with a hat walking around here. They say the man is her former husband who comes to fetch her every night. My father opened the gate of the fence, which was tied with an old chain, and we entered the place. The mansion was falling apart, and for sure, no one had entered it for many years. I asked about the lady's daughters, and my father said they came, took care of their mother's body, and put up a big "for sale" sign. But no one ever came to buy it, and that was over 30 years ago. Since then, the house has been there, just waiting to collapse. We looked through the windows, and there were still things inside, rotting from the humidity. We looked at the tree from which my brother said he saw something jumping, and the distance to the house was quite large. Whatever he saw would have needed wings to jump. My father thought it might have been someone trying to scare them or a wanderer, but given the condition of the house, no one could have climbed to the 2nd floor because the wood was so rotten. We went back home, and from day to day, no one could make my brother pass by the road near that mansion. He would go around the other side, taking a detour just to avoid seeing the mansion again. Almost a year after that happened, I was coming back at night from a chat with friends who lived in a nearby village and had to pass by the house. It was night and a full moon, but I wasn't afraid and even walked slowly, looking towards the windows. As I got closer, I noticed a shadowy figure in the darkness. I felt a chill run down my spine but kept walking. Suddenly, the figure moved, revealing itself in the moonlight. It was a man with a hat and a cape, exactly as my brother had described. He seemed to float, moving silently from the mansion to the tree. My heart raced, and Max started barking furiously beside me. The man began walking toward me, and I ran into the woods, taking the path my brother used to get home. I could only hear footsteps following me, but when I looked back, I saw nothing. When I realized I couldn't make it home, I ran towards a nearby reservoir, entered the woods, and without thinking twice, I jumped into the water. From inside the water, I saw the shadow emerging from the woods. The man I saw seemed to have grown in size. From afar, I could see him walking near the shallow end. I dove and came up far away, and when I heard nothing more, I got out of the water and ran home. I arrived, banging hard on the door, asking to be let in, and quickly told them something was following me. I detailed what happened to my parents, and my father immediately said, "It's the ghost people talk about. I told you it was true. You saw the man who comes to fetch the widow, and the shadow you saw in the house must be her, not resting in peace and still haunting the area." My brother didn't stay to hear the whole story because he already knew what had chased me. Around the same time, there was a report from a lady, Dona Consuelo, who woke up early to do laundry at the reservoir. She said she left the house just before dawn, but it was still dark and saw an old woman walking near the fence. The lady had a black veil over her face and was limping, just like the widow used to walk. She hurried back home, scared. My mother, upon hearing all this, began to pray and spread salt around the house. She said we needed to protect our family from any evil that might be around us. The following days were tense. My father forbade any of us from going near the mansion or the reservoir, especially at dusk. One night, while we were having dinner, we heard a strange noise from outside. My father grabbed his shotgun and went to check. Max started barking desperately, and we all stayed silent, waiting. Minutes later, my father returned, pale, saying he had seen the shadow of the man in the black cape around the house. That confirmed our suspicions that we were being watched. From that day on, our routine changed. We avoided leaving the house at night and always walked in groups. My brother, who previously avoided the mansion out of fear, now wouldn't go anywhere alone. The story of the haunted mansion and its ghosts spread through the village, and soon everyone knew about the danger lurking in the area. Over time, the appearances decreased, but the feeling of unease never completely left. Every time we passed by the mansion, the memory of the man in the black cape and the widow's shadow resurfaced, reviving the fear that never really disappeared. Even after so many years, the story of the haunted mansion remains alive in our memories, as a reminder that there are things in this world we will never fully understand.